All right, I have 10:01 Pacific, 1:01 Eastern on the clock, so we will get things started. First off, happy Friday. Welcome everyone. We are here today to have our webinar around a deep dive in porting with Flowroute. So quick agenda for the day. We'll go through some quick introductions. We'll discuss porting landscape, uh, followed by porting pitfalls, some tips and tricks, and finally wrap up with any upcoming events that we have going on. So should be pretty smooth uh, webinar today as far as porting concerned. As always, we have the Q&A available for you, so feel free to drop any questions. I'll also stay behind today if there's any additional questions that need to be asked. But we will keep things rolling. First off, my name is Jonathan Santana. I'm the sales manager on the e-commerce team B2B for BCM1, covering Flowroute. Today we'll also have Rick Matthews and Sylas Aldridge. Rick Matthews is our director of customer operations, and Sylas is a manager of porting. So they'll be here to help present with us today. I think importantly when we talk about, flow route and obviously everyone here today, reasons why you choose flow route, right? We're a certified and supported trunk provider. We have pay as you go option as well as post pay option. Sub accounts are hyper network for guaranteed income and call delivery. But I think what brings everyone here today is obviously our deep dive in porting, but our dedicated porting team, right? And so we have that support here on the call today, kind of help guide through what some of those tips and tricks and secrets to getting ports to go through efficiently, right? So um with that said, uh I would like to introduce Sylas again. He's our manager of porting, LNP manager. He'll go through quite a bit today, and like I said, if you have any questions at the end of it, feel free. You could drop them in the Q&A, um, or I'll open up the mic at the end today. So Silas, hand it over to you.
Okay, so one of the great things about Flowroute here is that we have a dedicated boarding team. I'm the manager of the team. We've got a few people underneath me that all have a lot of experience submitting orders. They know what to do when things aren't going smoothly, and they are able to do a lot of porting all at once. So if you don't know what local number portability is, it's what allows you to keep your existing phone number. It's something that one of the Telecommunications Acts enforced by the FCC. And it allows people to change their service without having to change their number. Before this kind of thing, if you move to a new carrier, it usually meant switching your numbers, which huge inconvenience for businesses, especially with all these big multi-line accounts, especially when you've got business cards printed out, maybe even billboards, that kind of stuff. You never want to change your number. The kind of technical thing of how it works is by assigning a new location routing number. We call them LRNs. And that tells us that instead of the original carrier who had the phone number to direct calls through the new provider's network. And so, yeah, the porting process is pretty similar, but there are differences between carriers and the way people do things. Some of your old school enterprise accounts like at AT&T, they've got some different procedures that you won't see from, say, your average VoIP carrier. But the basics of it is we get a port submission, you submit it to us, and then we submit it to the losing carrier. And the carrier, it'll go pending until they get a response. Now, some carriers, they have automation where you get a response really quickly or right away. Some carriers, they have a team of people who need to look at it, human beings, and it goes into their queue and it takes a little while. And one thing that can happen there is you can get rejected. Now, when you get rejected, what we try to do is we pass the rejection on to you so you know what the other carrier said and how we think you can overcome that rejection. Now, eventually what's going to happen is we're going to get this accepted, and we call that FOC. It's a firm order commitment. That is the specification that the order is accepted and also a date. It combines the acceptance and a due date. And then finally on that FOC date, we activate the number. That's when it'll start using our LRN and start routing through Flowroute's network. And so a lot of the things that you can do to help a port happen before you submit it. Number one thing is we've got to confirm portability. So everyone has to allow number portability, but there's a couple components to whether or not a carrier can actually operate your number and port it. There's a geographic component. So there's a bunch of rate centers, and that's kind of geographic basis for a phone number. Now, not every carrier services every rate center. So that can be a stopping point. A lot of really rural areas, they only have one carrier that operates in those areas, and some of those numbers are not portable for that reason. Now, the other thing that can stop it is a lack of interconnection agreement or a trading partner agreement. So carriers actually have to make an agreement with all the other carriers that they're going to port with. And if they don't have that, they're not allowed to port. So Flowroute has agreements with, all the big carriers and most of the small ones too. Every once in a while, we come along a new one that we haven't done business before, and we get a new agreement. Sometimes it's just not possible, and those numbers aren't portable too. So again, before the port gets submitted, the better organized you are, the easier the port is going to be. So one thing that we need is a letter of agency and authorization. The cool thing about Flowroute is that when you create the port order, it actually creates a digitally signed LOA for us. So it's not something that you're going to necessarily have to provide for us, except for in some cases with toll-free numbers. There are carriers, we're talking about different processes that different carriers have. Some of them require a wet signature, and they don't take any digitally signed documents. So every once in a while, you'll have a port for a toll-free number, and we'll need to get an actual physically signed document from you. Now, one of the most important things you can include for us also is a bill copy. And what the FCC wants when they're talking about proof of ownership is an invoice dated within 30 days that shows the porting telephone numbers. Now, some carriers, their invoices don't look like that, but the best thing you can ever get us is that proof of ownership where it's a bill copy that's really recent and it has the numbers on it right away. Sometimes we need to escalate these orders, and that's the best thing we can ever have to escalate and get something approved that might not be going smoothly. Now, a CSR, that's a customer service record. This can be super helpful. When a carrier will give their customers a CSR record, it tells them the exact name, address, everything that we're supposed to use to get the port approved. It makes it really easy when you have that. And usually that consists of an account number, a business name, business address, authorized signer, like a human being's name, and sometimes a PIN as well. So not every CSR includes that. Like a Flowroute CSR doesn't have a PIN. But when you can get that from your carrier before you submit the port, it'll tell you exactly the information that you need to plug into our form. So yeah, the main thing about porting is that everything has to be super accurate. Even like a one-letter typo or a missing suite number or building number, something like that can get you rejected. A lot of carriers are really making sure that you have to dot your T's and cross your I's. And everything just really has to be perfect. It's really easy to get rejected for a silly typo or something, like I said, like a missing suite number or something that's just incomplete. Now, for a lot of carriers, we need to specify if it's a full port, the whole account is moving, or if it's partial. Some of these, especially big enterprise accounts, they need to have a billing telephone number assigned to the account. And sometimes what we have to do is tell them what new number is going to be the billing telephone number if it's a partial port and some numbers are being left behind. Or we have to specify, nope, this is a full port, all the numbers are moving. And it's just something that, again, it's carrier to carrier, a little bit different. And oftentimes we need that from big business accounts. And then another thing that can cause rejection is any kind of other order. So sometimes people think, oh no, it has to be another port order that can get you blocked for a pending order rejection. But if you have like a disconnect order or an order that has to do with a hunt group, or maybe you just have to disconnect these hunt groups first, There's features and other orders that can cause these things to get rejected. So this is mostly for big enterprise accounts. Again, you got to get your ducks in a row. Things like hunt groups and orders that aren't for actually the phone numbers can get in the way and block your order. So for porting timeframes, the first available port date, it depends on the losing carrier. Every carrier has their own interval. And for the most part, though, a standard port, it's going to take about 1 to 2 business weeks. You can put a requested date in. If you don't put one in your order, we're going to try to get the one that we think works the best and will happen quickest. But these porting timeframes, they depend on how many numbers you're porting and what carrier you're porting from. Project ports, they can take a bit longer. Usually carriers define that is 50 or more numbers. And what they usually need to do is work outside their automation and have human being look at it. So it takes a little bit longer. They've got to scrub the numbers and do different things on their side where it takes them a little bit longer. So keep that in mind when you're submitting ports, that the more numbers you have, it might fall into that project port category. And it could take, instead of a week or two, could take a month, maybe even longer. So eventually, like I said, when we get these submitted, we're going to get a firm order commitment. We're going to get these orders accepted. And then that FOC date's going to be the date that you know it's going to occur. Anytime you modify a port, it can risk that FOC date getting pushed back. And once we get too close to it, it's best efforts to change it. So within 48 hours of the FOC date, sometimes it's just not possible to change or cancel. And again, this is something that's different carrier to carrier. It depends a lot on who we're working with. So post port, sometimes you'll notice that after the port has completed, numbers might still be routing through the old carrier. Usually the reason for that is because of losing carrier translations. Again, this is something all carriers have different processes. Some folks don't use translations, but the ones that do, they usually have an automated process to remove them. And generally it happens within 24 hours, usually faster. But if you're seeing traffic continue to go in through the old carrier, that's probably what you're dealing with. A lot of times what has to happen is the old carrier has to just remove the numbers and complete the port on their end. And that'll get them to stop routing through them and start routing through the new carrier. And here we're going to go over our porting form and just the basics of how you'd submit in order to Flowroute. Didn't show every single click on here, but once you go into your did section on the account, there's a port order section. It's pretty easy to find, and you'll find our form here. We try to give all the instructions that you might need in case you're not familiar with it. But we also have a couple tools here that you want to check out. Like there's a check number portability option. So ahead of any porting, you can go ahead and check whether your number is portable so you don't waste any time trying to fill out this form when it's not. But on this page here, you can either paste your numbers in or you can upload a file that has your numbers in, and we'll get them into the form, and that's how you start out. One cool thing about porting with Flowroute is if you have numbers that are on different underlying carriers, like some carriers use an off-net carrier. And so you'll have one carrier operating one number, another carrier operating another number, but they're on the same account. They've got the same address and account number. You can put them all into the same order here, and our system will automatically split them by underlying carrier because each port needs to be submitted directly to that underlying carrier. Okay, and here's the kind of meat of the form. This is where you put in your account details. Like this is what we're talking about mostly when we talked about CSR, customer service information. The information that they give you on a CSR is what you'd use to fill out this form. So current provider name, sometimes that's a reseller. It can help us know whether or not, you're directly dealing with the carrier, or maybe it's someone reselling the services, which can inform us of what we might need to do to get the port to go smoothly. But this is where you want to make sure that there's no typos, that you've got the right person's name who's authorized on the account. Generally, you want to get this information directly from the carrier because sometimes it's not what you'd expect. Sometimes, your billing and your service address might be a little bit different. This is where you want to double check that, and it'll be a lot smoother getting the port going if you have that ahead of time. So you can plug in a completion date. Like I said before, we're going to try to, if you don't put one in, get the first date that carrier will let us get. Usually, again, that's about a business week out, but it depends carrier to carrier. Some of them could go a little bit quicker. Okay, and then here, finally, we've got our page to upload a document. So we want to get a bill copy, whatever the best documentation you have is. Ideally, like we said, it shows the numbers, it shows a date that is within 30 days. Some carriers, they don't put the numbers on their invoices. You're going to want to get what the best thing you have and upload it here. And one thing that people sometimes miss is once you upload a file here, to some people, it looks like you're ready to go, but they miss this submit for approval button. So once you get everything created with the port, it'll be in this pending, but there's still an action required, and it's to submit it to us. And actually, when you click that submit button, that's what digitally signs the LOA for us and gives us the right to be your porting agent and port this number on your behalf. So make sure you don't miss that when you're submitting a port, just that last final step, or else it'll sit in pending for a couple days until you notice.